Hello everyone, good morning, and thank you for joining us all this Sunday morning on a regular Dharma talk. We are doing just with the Dharma talk without the meditation these days because there's a little bit, the story of life is a little bit engaging. So that's why we're just starting with the short refuge prayer and four immeasurables, and then followed by the talk. So that's we're going to do. We have had so far got a few sessions already, and we're going to continue a few more sessions. Particularly today, we are coming to the last part of the life of the Buddha and some prominent figures and incidents that happen in their lives. So this series of Life of Buddha is very important because people who don't know Buddha, they don't really know Buddhism and its history. So it's very important that we do that. So take a couple of moments to gather your thoughts and good intention. Sit still, secure your space to be free of any distractions. And so over the next hour or bit, we will be tuning our mind to not just listen to the historical facts of the Buddha's life, but what those incidents and relate to our lives, ups and downs, and how we can best understand them in the context of the teachings, so as well as those people around our lives. So with this in mind, we will now do the refuge prayer. Oyenda Buddha Dhamma Sangha Atere Vyete Alardama Vaivachu Ajehandala Ajare Buddha Vatuve Enda Buddha Dharma Sangha Aitere Vyete Alardama Vaivachu Ajehandala Ajare Buddha Vatuve Enda Buddha Dharma Sangha Aitere Vyete Alardama Vaivachu Ajehandala Ajare Buddha Vatuve. May all beings have happiness and the cause of happiness. May they be free from suffering and the cause of suffering. May they know a power of happiness that knows no suffering. May they dwell in equanimity, free from attachment, aversion of those near and far. May all beings have happiness and cause of happiness. May they be free from suffering and the cause of suffering. May they know a powerful happiness that knows no suffering. May they dwell in equanimity, free from attachment, aversion of those near and far. May all beings have happiness and cause of happiness. May they be free from suffering and the cause of suffering. May they know a powerful happiness that knows no suffering. May they dwell in equanimity, free from attachment, aversion of those near and far. Ego de intelligence and prede possession of it. Vehade yatandandharama agrelo and come vigos. So last week we talked about quite a few important figures in lives of the Buddha. Today we'll continue a little bit more on that, particularly the one particular individual by the name of Angulimala. So we're going to closely look at the life of the Angulimala, how his life turned out to be the way it became. Usually we do not hear the whole story of his life, so we only get to hear part of it. So this morning I'm going to go over that story. During the time of the Buddha, there was 6 great kings, and one of those was King Prasenajita, who was king of Shravasti. And that, of course, before the Shakyamuni Buddha became enlightened and became the very great spiritual master of the era, there were many other teachers, there were many other spiritual teachers. So King Prasenajit had a chaplain who was very learned, a Brahmin. And this Brahmin was always doing the calculation, astrological calculation. He never did anything without doing astrological calculation. And that was his very job. He was the royal astrologer. So it was his job to cast horoscopes, advise about the best time to embark on various projects, and ward off evil influences with spells and mantras. And he was filled with joy one day when his wife has become pregnant, and then when the boy's horoscope was drawn up, his joy turned to dread. First, he thought he was going to be very happy because he's going to have a beautiful son. But nevertheless, his horoscope suggested otherwise. So his horoscope indicated that the boy would grow up with very strong criminal tendencies. Filled with a very superstitious fear, this is very important to understand some of the big tragedies that we have witnessed, like the king of Nepal, whose son wasn't allowed to marry the girl he wanted to marry, but his mother, who's very, very superstitious Hindu, completely prevented him and caused great tragedy. So there are similar things happening here. So filled with this very superstitious fear, the parents decided to name the boy Ahimsaka. Ahimsaka means it's opposite of himsaka. Himsaka means violent one. So ahimsaka means non-violent one. They thought their name will bless him, in the hope that would counter the influence of the stars. The boy grew up into a fine youth who was good at his studies, obedient to his parents. But to make sure that the boy would not turn very bad, they constantly stressed to him to be important in obeying them, doing everything by the book, and never to upset anybody. So they were trying to really make sure the boy doesn't have any negative influences. Eventually, Ahimsaka left home for further studies in Taxila, in the ancient India. Today is modern Pakistan, for his higher studies. In those days, when young Brahmins would go to Taxila and study, they used to they have to go to the house of the learned teacher and become part of the family. And so that he usually did the housework at home, and in exchange of that, teacher gave him food and clothing and gave the teachings. The relationship would be like between the father and son. So Ahimsaka was particularly obedient student, and which earned him very special attention from his teacher, and also created a cause of great jealousy with his other students. They decided to try to turn the teacher against Ahimsaka. According to plan, they went one by one to the teacher and whispered that his favorite student was trying to usurp his position. At the first time, the teacher dismissed these as a nonsense, but gradually the seeds of doubt were sown, and they eventually sprouted into a suspicion, and teacher became convinced of Ahimsaka's hostility to him. This young man is so strong in body and quite capable of doing me any harm. I must get rid of him and make sure he never comes back. So the teacher thought to himself, and then he said, one day the teacher called Ahimsaka and said, "You have successfully finished your studies. Now you must bring me my fee." "Certainly," said Ahimsaka. "What do you demand as your fee?" "You must bring me 1,000 first fingers for human hand." The horrified Ahimsaka responded, saying, "But surely you don't require this of me." Teacher said, "You have taken from me, and in return you must now do my bidding. Go now and bring the 1,000 fingers." The teacher's hope was, of course, that in the process of carrying these tasks, Ahimsaka would be killed, and he would never have to see him again. So that was the teacher's wish. So this tells a lot about the sowing the seeds of what do we call jealousy, and sowing the seeds of the doubt and suspicion. So that both the teacher fell to that trap, and he therefore forced his student teacher lost his own plot, I suppose. An unhappy student returned to Kosala, that was his hometown, and went to live in the Jalani forest. And reluctantly at first, but later without compunction, he began waylaying one lone travelers, killing them, cutting off one of their fingers, and then living off the possessions he stole. At first he hung the fingers on a tree where the birds would pick on the flesh, after which the bones would drop to the ground and be scattered. So after a while Ahimsaka would thread the fingers on a cord and hang them around his neck. This gave him the terrible appearance, and then the notorious and feared murder came to be known as Angulimala. So his name, Anguli means finger, Mala means necklace, so finger necklace. Eventually, through murder and perhaps by cutting fingers to corpses that in ancient India were buried, but cast away in the Chanakya, were not buried, but cast away in Chanakya, Angulimala had accumulated 999 fingers. So his parents, who has sent him to further study, came to hear that the murderer whom everyone was talking about was their own son. Embarrassed and ashamed, the old Brahmin disowned his son. The mother could not bring herself to do so, because like her husband, and so she planned to go in the forest where her son was known to operate and try to talk to him. Just when it looked like Angulimala might even kill his own mother, he came into contact with the Buddha. So this is how the influence of the Buddha comes in. When the Buddha heard about Angulimala, he quietly left Jetavana. The Jetavana is the monastery in Shravasti, and set out for the Jalani forest, some 40 kilometers away. As the Buddha walked along the road, a group of travelers passed him, and as they did, they warned him not to continue alone because of the danger. He simply smiled and continued on his way. When Angulimala saw the Buddha, he was surprised. This is wonderful indeed. Usually only travelers in groups of 20, 30, 40 come along this road. Here is an ascetic traveling alone. I'll kill him. Seizing his sword and shield, Angulimala emerged from the jungle and began to chase the Buddha. Although he ran as fast as he could not get closer to the Buddha, who walked gracefully. He put on a burst of speed, but still could not get near the Buddha. Utterly bewildered, he shouted out, "Stop, ascetic!" The Buddha turned around and looked at him and replied, "I have stopped. Why don't you stop?" Even more bewildered, Angulimala asked, "What do you mean, ascetic? I have stopped in that harm. I have stopped in that I harm no living being. You kill, and therefore you have not stopped," replied the Buddha. The terrible thing that he had done and the wretchedness of his life dawned on Angulimala. He broke down and sobbed. He threw down his weapons, bowed at the feet of the Buddha, asked to become his disciple. Buddha ordained him, and together they set out to Shravasti. Sometime later, as the Buddha and Angulimala were sitting in the Jetavana, in the monastery, King Prasenajita and a retinue of fully armed soldiers came to visit. "Where are you going, O king?" asked the Buddha. "Has the border dispute broken with Magadha?" "No, Lord," said the king. "There's a terrible murderer operating in this kingdom. Because of him, people in outlying areas pack up their belongings, leave their villages, move to safety to the city. Now the citizens have petitioned me to get rid of him. I'm setting out to find him." "If you heard that this murderer had given up his terrible life and had become a monk, what would you do, O king?" said the Buddha. "Oh, I suppose I would bow down to him and treat him as I would do any other monk. But such a thing possible, Lord?" Buddha stretched out his arm and said, This, O king, is Angulimala." The king drew back in fear, but Buddha reassured him, "Do not be afraid, O king. There is no need to alarm." The king came closer and looked carefully at the monk and asked, "Is this really Angulimala, Lord?" "Oh, yes." Then he addressed Angulimala. "What is your father's name? What clan does your mother belong to?" "My father is a Gaga and my mother is a Mantani." "And then maybe of good cheer. If you need any requisites, I will make an effort to provide for you," said the king nervously. "Thank you, sir. But I have enough robes," replied Angulimala. Then the king Prasenajit came and sat near the Buddha and said, "Lord, it is truly wonderful that without a stick or a sword you are able to pacify those whom I cannot pacify with sticks or swords." Buddha smiled. So, Angulimala led a life of simplicity and solitude under the Buddha's guidance and eventually attained Buddhist sainthood as an arhat. But even then, there are many who remember his terrible past, and people would shun him. Often he would return from his arms round with no food, and sometimes people would throw stones at him. Once he returned from his arms round with blood and cuts all over his body, having been attacked by angry mob. Buddha comforted him, saying, "You must endure this, Angulimala. You must silently endure this. This is a result of past deeds you have done previously." Angulimala's story, this is very important, is worthy of analysis to understand samsara better. But most of the Buddha's teaching is about how people do things very unconsciously or being influenced by a very negative set of circumstances. They couldn't turn life better. So his story indicates that violence was not the way of life Angulimala had ever chosen himself. He was a genius student, obeyed to his teacher's wishes without asking any question. He was the victim of jealous plots. The parental superstition did not help. His subservient attitude towards teacher and parent made him even more vulnerable. Furthermore, due to many unfortunate causes and conditions, violence was imposed upon him owing to jealousy from his fellow students, spite and ill will from his teacher, and superstitious belief of his father. The cruelty of deluded people can make innocent people fall prey to taking negative action, extreme reaction, without knowing its consequences. With blind faith of worshipping an incompetent teacher, Ahimsaka was poorly guided and lacked wisdom. So therefore, obedience without wisdom is blind faith. Basically, that's what Ahimsaka's weakness was. This was indicated by this is mainly to do with his upbringing, because of his very super superstitious parent didn't help him. This is indicated by the stupidity of resorting to violence, killing so many innocent people out of religious fanaticism. In spite of this tragedy of his earlier life, he was able to see light and peace once he embarked Dharma, but only after meeting the Buddha. So Angulimala's story is told again and again as an encouragement not to give up and stand up for yourself, not to look backwards. It is never too late to correct past mistakes. It is a good example how extreme difficulty can be a catalyst to break the deadlock to set oneself free. It also reveals the power of unconditional compassion and wisdom of the Buddha, who did not judge or condemn Angulimala, but gave him encouragement to stop his violent conduct of the past. So the story of Angulimala is often shared during giving teachings. Like Nagarjuna says to his friend, he says, "Do not be too hard on yourself or others who have made many, many mistakes." Since people like Angulimala, who has been very violent and killed many people, or King Ajatasattu, who has imprisoned his father and killed him to death, or Nanda, who was very attached to his wife, but who nevertheless later on realized and became a very noble example of a good monk. So they said, don't look down on yourself or your other people of their past mistakes, but give them a chance and give them an opportunity to unfold their mistakes and grow from those mistakes. So that's really the crux of this story of Angulimala. Of course, Angulimala had much deeper karmic causes from past life that has made him to be like that. But for him to be able to meet Buddha in such a situation is of course the rarest of a fortune, that he was able to later become the Arhat Angulimala. The Arhat Angulimala later became a great saint, and he made a vow. He made a vow to women who could not, because he robbed many people's children and killed them. He made a vow that women who couldn't bear children because of their biology or whatever, and if they pray to him, and then they become they become able to have children. So this belief in Sri Lanka and southern Buddhist countries, Theravada, is very strong, and they always see Angulimala as arhat of fertility, arhat of fertility. Because he robbed many parents' children, he tried to compensate that by offering prayers to give others have what we call children. So that's the really story of Angulimala. Now we're going to move. That's the story of Angulimala. So we have covered quite a few key figures in the life of Angulimala. Now we're going to go and visit a little bit about Devadatta. Remember, Devadatta was still very discontented. He did many terrible things, and he is now starting to lose his influence on King Ajatasattu, and because Ajatasattu and all of his followers have now become Buddha's disciples, and Devadatta is now being sort of rejected by many people because of his ill intention and his violence against the Buddha, and all his followers were no longer receiving due respect by the normal devotees that he used to have. So as Devadatta became very isolated and alienated because of his violence and so on, everybody whenever they see Devadatta, they would usually run away or avoid him. So there was one famous Buddhist bhikshuni called Bhikshuni Utpalavarna. As Bhikshuni Utpalavarna was entering the palace of King Ajatasattu for alms, then he said, then he quarreled. Then Devadatta quarreled with her, and what have I done that you have deprived me of alms? So because he couldn't get any alms, and then Devadatta physically abused the Bhikshuni Upalavarna, hit her with his very strong body, and then he killed the bhikkhu. He killed the bhikkhuni. The bhikkhuni is very famous bhikkhuni. She was involved in many Buddhist stories in relation to the number of the Buddhist vows and how they came to be. And so he killed one bhikkhuni. Killing a bhikkhuni or even shedding blood on them is one of the heinous crimes. And killing a bhikkhuni is considered to be one of the very heavy breach or transgression of his vows. So Devadatta, having committed such a misdeeds against the Buddha and many people, and being alienated and being sort of rejected by anyone, and having killed a nun and so on. So Devadatta was now feeling. He said only way that he can do is go and poison the Buddha. So Devadatta had kept very long fingernails. I don't know why. They later on they realized the reason he's keeping fingernails long was so that he can hide poisons under his fingernails, and then intending to scratch Buddha's feet and then so that he can poison Buddha's feet. When he drew closer to the Buddha and cast himself at his feet, tried to scratch him, the Blessed One's Buddha's legs had become adamantine hardness, so the Devadatta nails broke out and did not get to scratch or poison the Buddha's body at all. Then Buddha, however, granted him forgiveness, but on condition that he profess his faith to the Buddha. If he, however, he should do so with a lie in his heart, he would at once fall in hell. Buddha said, if you now confess your misdeeds and you really want to take refuge, sincerely you can do so. But if you did so with a very hidden agenda, you don't really mean in your heart, you would fall in hell. So Devadatta, who was now in great pain, exclaimed, to the marrow of my bones, I seek refuge in the Buddha. Hardly had he uttered the words, he completely, the earth cracked, and Devadatta fell through the crevice of the earth, because that means he directly went, because he didn't mean it. He was pretending he was taking refuge, but he didn't. So anyway, Devadatta died, fell in hell in sort of right in front of everybody. And during this time, because it's such a big incident, Buddha, however, sent Shariputra and Moggallanaputra to go to the hell and visit Devadatta, and to tell him that though he was then suffering for having tried to divide the brotherhood of the Sangha, having killed the bhikkhuni Utpalavarna, and having caused engaged in many violence act against Buddha and others, but because of after his karma expires, suffering in the hell, that later on he either after the expiration of his duration in hell, that he will become a Pratyeka Buddha. So therefore, what do you call? Shariputra and Moggallanaputra went to the hell and told that to Devadatta. So then the bhikshus came to the Buddha and said, "Lord, see what a grief Devadatta has soon become because of he has not listened to you." Buddha said, "This is not first time he has not listened to me. This has happened many times before." So Buddha told a past life story about how many lives that he had. Devadatta always not working with him very well, and this just has karmically continued so many lives. Anyway, Shariputra and Moggallanaputra, after having visited Devadatta in the hell, told various contemporary Indian religious teachers who they saw in the hell. And when they returned back from the hell, then they told that all your teachers are reborn in the hell. Because the doctrine they taught was incorrect and false, and therefore they themselves has fallen in the lower realms. So the disciples were so enraged at this that they resolved to avenge themselves on the calumniators, and so in doing so, they first quarreled with Shariputra, and then finally they attacked Moggallanaputra. And then they beat Moggallanaputra so bad that Moggallanaputra has just died. And this meaning Shariputra came to his rescue, but too late, and because of the heaviness of the karma, the Moggallanaputra was killed by the mob. Moggallanaputra and Shariputra was Buddha's two most prominent disciples, yeah. But Moggallanaputra died, and soon after that, the news of this assassination has spread everywhere, and the king had seized all the heretics who did this, and asked why Moggallanaputra, who had such a power to do great magic, was not able to escape from such violence. Then the Buddha told him that such was his destiny on account of bygone deeds. He had, in a former existence, treated his father and mother in a very terrible manner. So Buddha said that Moggallanaputra had to die in the mob violence even as Arhat, because he has unfinished karma from past lives, having committed patricide and matricide to his father and mother. So in this way, Moggallanaputra died under mob violence. Sometimes people usually ask why this is so. Arhats also have to die in such violence. They say arhats, not only arhats, even sometimes Buddhas have some residual karmas left. So here the Moggallanaputra has many many unfinished karma still left to be purified. So therefore, the after the killing of Moggallana Putra, many bhikkhus also died because they couldn't believe that eminent Moggallana Putra have to fall a victim to such a violence, didn't have any power. And they ordered 77,000 ordinary bhikshus also died together with him because they couldn't handle it. So Shariputra had a very difficult task of cremating his friend Moggallana Putra, and then they carried the ashes and his alms bowl, his cloak to the Buddha to Rajgriha. Blessed One, after the arrival in left Rajgriha and went to Shravasti, and then when everybody, all the devotees of the Buddha and disciples of the Buddha heard about the tragic death of Moggallana Putra, and most of them can't handle it. Not only that, Shariputra also died. Shariputra didn't suffer any violence, but he has also died because these two brothers, spiritual brothers, were so close, and Shariputra also died. And then the Ananda, the Buddha's now attendants, and his cousin went and asked permission of the Buddha and what to do. What should one do? How should one honor the remains of arhats? And the Buddha then gave very clear instructions how to honor the remains of an arhat, how to honor remains of a Buddha, and how to honor remains of king, and so on. So in this way, according to the Buddha's very detailed advice of how many the stupas should be square and square at the bottom, and then the round and the round on top of that, and then have a triangle on top, and then should have 13 banners on top of that. All the details of this, how the chetya, they go chetya is this original word for stupa. I think stupa is a kind of a derivation of word stup in Sanskrit, which actually is like probably more derived from the word tomb. So in any case, Buddha gave advice how to honor the remains of the deceased arhats, both Moggallana Putra and Shariputra. In the end, just to tell you the truth, Shariputra died in the room where he was born, and that is Nalanda. These days, those who know the story of Nalanda is nowadays visited as one very big Buddhist monastery, and that is said the main kind of object of attraction in Nalanda originally was the stupa of stupa of Shariputra. The stupa of Shariputra was where Shariputra was cremated, and it is Buddha himself presided over the cremation of Shariputra, and then gave those very clear advice how to honor the remains of the Shariputra and Moggallana Putra. Moggallana Putra died quite a little bit further away from that, and that there is actually a place where people believe that Moggallana Putra was cremated. There also built a stupa. So then, having heard the passing away of these two prominent disciples of Buddha, not soon after the the death of Devadatta, now what you're seeing is towards the end of the life of Buddha, everybody's dying, everybody's dying. And so around that time, what happened was the Anathapindaka, the great benefactor of Shravasti, asked permission of the Buddha to offer a feast which should be celebrated to celebrate the work of Shariputra. Remember, Shariputra is the one who started visited Shravasti first, and then awed everybody thinking he was the Buddha. He was so meticulous and perfect and realized and wise, and all his through meditation teaching, most people thought he was the Buddha. So therefore, King Anathapindra wanted to honor the Shariputras in a particular way. As Buddha gave his consent, and King Prasenajit had proclaimed the sound of the bell, and everybody was assembled. Even though the main stupa, original stupa, is built down in Nalanda, but they built a very big stupa in Shravasti. Now, when you go to Shravasti and when you read some of the archaeological books and so on, they have identified some of the many stupas in Shravasti. That is Shariputra Stupa, Moggallanaputra Sutra, particularly Angulimala Stupa, and all of the stupas are usually built in memory of those deceased arhats. So in any case, around this time, there was a lot of conflict in India between those 6 kingdoms, and I wouldn't go into that because of the not so people who are interested in Indian history, they can do that. But in the end, what happened was the Buddha's family, who are from the Shakyas, fall victim to the attack of the king Virudaka. They totally annihilated the whole Shakya kingdom. And Buddha was around, but he couldn't do a thing. He said that there was just kind of a collective karma of the Shakyas that nobody could do anything about it. In any case, later on, now we are coming to the Buddha himself reaching to the point of his telling to his disciple and attendant Ananda, that they were in Vaishali. The Vaishali is one of the 6 main cities where Buddha earlier ordained women into ordination, and also where a number of the teachings were given, where the what you call the monkeys and the wildlife, like the wild elephant, they all, when they came to offer the Buddha honey and so on. So when Buddha always liked to go to Vaishali. Vaishali was such a neatly kept city and was very well built with so many beautiful parks and a river, because it was situated next to a river. And he was spending some time with his attendant Ananda in Vaishali. And then the Buddha said, "Now, Ananda, we will go to Kushinagar." He says, tell the people of Kushinagar, the people of the Kushinagar is the Mallas. Tell the Mallas that I'm coming to their land and where I will pass away. So Buddha actually asked Ananda to inform the people of Malla that Buddha will come to their land and he will breathe their last. And then, of course, Ananda protested to the Buddha. He said, "Why would you like to choose to go to, instead of requesting Buddha to live long, which is a mistake." So later on, they said that Ananda made 12 mistakes. One of that mistake is not requesting Buddha to live long. He was protesting. They said, you want to go and die there? Why you want to go die there? You should go die somewhere much nicer. We have lots of followers and lots of devotees. Why you want to go to somewhere where you have never been and it's just an ordinary village? Why you want to go there to die? So Ananda, as Buddha's cousin and attendant, Buddha told him that this is my last time that I would see Vaishali, and he was about to pass away in a place called Kushinara. So, and of course, Ananda could not dissuade Buddha, and nor did Ananda succeed to request Buddha to live long. It is said that Ananda should have done that, but he didn't. When you become so close, even Ananda is always protesting the Buddha. Why you want to do that for? This is like an old couple. Whatever the mother or husband says, the other one says, "Why you want to do that for?" Anyway, So it's quite interesting, Even the Buddha had this one protester. So later on, Ananda faced the consequences of many of these things. Anyway, then they travel from Vaishali towards Kushinagar, and on the way, they came to on the way to the Mallas, and they were traveling. They stopped at one night at, of course, different places, but they particularly, probably the night before they reached Kushinagar, then stopped at the home of a blacksmith named Kunda, because he is a blacksmith, and he listened to the Buddha. He sat there until all the people have left. Then he arose and invited the Buddha and his disciple to eat with him, and the Blessed One, and accepted the hospitality. So before the night was over, the Kunda, the blacksmith, had prepared for the Blessed One a quantity of delicious food. And when the Buddha came for the meal, he filled an iron bowl with food which had been expressly prepared for the Buddha, and placed it before him with his own hands. But one of the wicked bhikkhu took the bowl and the food which had been offered to the Buddha and hid it in his bosom, and thought both the Buddha and Kunda saw him do so, but they said nothing. Even though Buddha and Kunda saw this, he did that. They said nothing. Then Kunda went and had another iron bowl filled with other delicious kinds of food and presented it to Buddha. And then the brethren he treated to delicious food, both hard and soft, and waited on them himself. When the Buddha had finished eating, he spoke some verses to Kunda. He spoke very special verses to Kunda. So passing through the village called Pawa, Pawa is a village near Kushinagar, Blessed One entered into wilderness on the other side of the river Hiranyavati, and then said to Ananda, Ananda, my back pains me. I wouldn't like to rest. I would need to rest. I will need to rest. Fold in 4 the Tathagata robes. He says, please fold my robe in 4 times so that he can lie down. Because they never have a mattress or seat. They always use the very robe itself folded 4 times, then he can sit on. Then he lied down on his right side and drew his feet together. Having done which, he asked Ananda go to the river to fill his bowl with water to drink. So this is another mistake. He says, I'm thirsty, and go and give me some water. And then Ananda quickly goes to collect some water. And then, but 500 wagons have just crossed that river and had stirred it up. So the river was very dirty, very muddy. Ananda filled the bowl and brought it back with the Blessed One. He gave the Buddha the dirty water, the muddy water. He told him, however, the water was muddy, and added, my lord, I beg you to only wash your feet and rinse your mouth with this water. So Ananda said, I thought you were just wanted to wash your feet, so you can just do that with this water. Please don't complain. Here's another one. He says, don't complain. Kind of go and wash your hands. Don't drink with that. A little way hence is the Hiranyavati river, and if the Blessed One only only drinks of its water, his body will once more be whole. So the Blessed One only wash his feet and rinse his water, and sitting down patiently, his legs crossed and his body erect, and he's soon lost in meditation. Now at that time, one of the great nobles of the Malla kingdom, a man called Paksha, was traveling on the road, and seeing the Buddha in his splendor seated at the foot of the tree, he approached him, and having respectfully saluted him, sat down on one side. Buddha asked him what teacher he followed. What he said, I followed Arata Kalama, and so on. Buddha, having told him what happened to him while in the room of a violent storm, then Buddha actually was able to convert this person into the Dharma. So in this way, hence the Buddha went to there's one of the mistakes later on they complained to Ananda will be that Ananda offered dirty water to the Buddha. Even though Buddha did not drink that water, but still it was not proper him to tell the Buddha, go and wash your feet with that and sort of shut up. If you want to drink some water, we can go drink with the water from the river. So the other river. Hence they went to the Hiranyawati river, and when they had come to the bank of the river, Blessed One put aside all his garments but one, and going down in the river, and he bathed. Then crossing the stream, he dried himself and sat down. Then he told Ananda that Kunda, the worker in the metals, the blacksmith, must not feel remorse because he died after eating a meal at his house. Because often in Buddhism they say, what did the Buddha die from? They say, he ate from, he died of colic, or he died of indigestion. So they usually blame this Kunda. And then they departed, journeying to Kushinagar through the wilderness between Hiranyawati River and the town. Again he asked Ananda to arrange him a couch, for he was weary and would fain rest a while, so he lay down and went to sleep. When he awakened, he exhorted Ananda to steadfastness and the bhikshus to walk in the way of the truth and follow the sutra in Vinaya and Abhidharma, and that they assumed their journey to Kushinara and stopped near the twin sala trees. Now, knowing that his time had come, he told Ananda to place Tathagata's couch between the twin sala trees with his head to the north, for in the middle watch of the night I will utterly pass away. Ananda did as he was bidden, and Blessed One laid down on his right side, drew his feet together, and gave his mind to thoughtfulness, to the thought of light, to the thought of nirvana. So Ananda stood by his side, holding onto his couch, and tears flowed from his eyes, and as he thought, soon the Blessed One will utterly pass away. Soon the Sugata will utterly pass away. The eyes of the world will soon pass away. And he went out and wept. Buddha noticed his absence, so he asked the bhikshus who pressed around him and to call Ananda, and said to him, Ananda, thou hast ever been attentive to Tathagata by acts of love, acts of kindness, acts of goodness. And then he explained to the brethren that as there were 4 wonderful qualities in a king of kings, so likewise there were 4 in Ananda. When the Buddha had finished speaking, Ananda said, Lord, there are 6 great cities, Shravasti, Saketa, Champa, Varanasi, Vaishali, Rajgriha, and other besides. Why then have you seen fit to reject these and decide to die in this poor village? And the sandhole, this struggling village, this suburb, this semblance of a town. Buddha rebuked him for thus speaking of Kushinara, and thus narrated the history of King Mahasudarshana and his glorious capital Kushanavati, which had become Kushinara. So Buddha was telling how great the Kushinagar was in the past glories, and he says you shouldn't be too critical of Kushinara being such a sand hole or poor village. Anyway, now the Venerable Upavana was standing in front of Buddha, Blessed One, and the Buddha told him, Bhikshu, stand not in front of me. Then Ananda said, Lord, I have attended the use 20 or more years. I've never hitherto before heard you speak harshly to any venerable. He said, why are you speaking so harsh? Again, the attendants are like that. He's arguing with Buddha. Then the Blessed One told the former history of Upavana, which accounted for what he had said to him. After this incident, Ananda asked the Buddha how they must honor him after death. Ananda, he replied, take no trouble about that. The Brahmins and householders who are believers will attend to this. How then, Lord, must Brahmins and householders who are believers honor the Blessed One's remain? Ask Ananda. Ananda, they must treat him as those of King of Kings. Lord, how do they treat the king remains of the kings of kings? Ananda, body of kings, the kings wrapped in bands of cloth, and when it was then wrapped and covered in 500 layers of cotton, after that it is put to an iron case filled with oil, it is covered, and so on. So Buddha gave very clear instructions how to attend to the do the cremation of the Buddha's body. Go, Ananda, tell the Mallas of Kushinara, your master will pass away at midnight today, leaving every particle of skandhas behind. So he invited them to visit him. The Mallas came to him and instructed them, after which Ananda presented all the Mallas to the Buddha in the first watch of the night. Then there occurs in the text what appears to be an interpolation. It is the history of conversion of the last person that Buddha gave teaching, who is the king of Gandharvas, called Abhinanda. This Abhinanda was he was a great musician, celestial musician, and he was playing 100-string guitar or some kind of sitar, and was most amazing music. And he was very, very proud of his musical talent. And then the Buddha knew that this is time for him to convert this. Then Buddha actually played single-string guitar and produced even more melodious musical tones than that of 100-string guitar of Gandharva. So in this way, he was converted into Buddhism. So Buddha actually told the past life connection with this man as well. So anyway, now we're coming to the last part of the story where Buddha passed away, and in Kushinagar between the two sala trees, and during which the earth shook 6 different ways, and then of course all the monks, everyone there was so sad and so bereaved and so lost and sobbing, and some even died. 11,000 of them died together with the Buddha. 11,000 of the monks died together with the Buddha. Many of them survived, like Ananda and others, and then the reason Buddha explained before his death that the reason he had chosen to pass away in Kushinagara was so that none of the other 6 great Indian Buddhist kingdoms will not have a greater claim on his relic than anybody else. So Buddha had in the meantime already appointed a Shakya monk called Drona, who will oversee the dividing of his relics into 8 portions. But of course, that was not known to most people. So when the Buddha passed away in Kushinagar, everyone from the other 6 or 7 kingdoms, from the people from the Rajgriha, people from Kosambi, people from Kapilavastu and Varanasi and Anga, and all of them sent troops, saying, threatening the king of Malla, saying that you must hand over all the relics of the Buddha, because Buddha got enlightened in my town, or Buddha taught the Dharma in my city, or was born in my city, or everybody made a claim asking for the relics. And then, of course, the Malla people were only recently been successful to meet the Buddha, but they had no great claim. But they were the custodians, because Buddha passed away on their land. Then in the meantime, Buddha's holy remains were divided into 8 portions, and the Venerable Drona, who Buddha has already appointed, gracefully told each of them not to fight over Buddha's remain, that those with faith, no matter how small portion of relic they will receive, it will increase as much as their faith allows. So they shouldn't feel it is too small a quantity, because Buddha is such an enlightened being whose remain will increase as relics. So as a result of this, the Drona was able to divide the relics to 8 portions, and then these relics were divided into 8 portions, and each of these 8 kingdoms took the liberty to build stupas, to build 8 stupas. These 8 stupas they built, were all to what do you call, all related to the 8 great major events in the life of the Buddha. In the life of the Buddha. So the life of the Buddha, starting with Lumbini and until Mahaparinirvana. So the stupas were related to that. Like in Lumbini, the stupa is called Lotus Hip Stupa, and in Sahat Mahat, where the Buddha descended from heaven, there is a stupa that commemorates his descension from heaven. And then in Rajgriha, the stupa is a stupa of reconciliation, because Buddha went to Rajgriha, he gave teachings, but the main thing he did was to reconcile warring parties, and they all made a pact not to fight wars but make peace. So there's stupa of reconciliation, or stupa of peace. Then of course there's stupa of Mahabodhi stupa in Bodh Gaya, where he got enlightened. And then Mahaparinirvana stupa that is commemorate the passing away in Kushinagar. So in this way, there are 8 main stupas are built. Each of the kingdoms receive their portion of the share of the share of the relics of the Buddha, and then they all became very, very contented, and they all had miraculous experiences of being able to receive the relics from the Buddha and then build. So what happened was that so after the relics of the Buddha was divided, then each of the groups went and built the stupas in their own kingdom, as well as stupas for the various arhats who passed away, who belonged to the various locations and their home kingdoms and so on. So then, because of the sudden passing away of the Buddha, they all started to build stupas or monuments. And then stupas became the more kind of local religious monuments the people have to be contented with now, because they can't go to see the Buddha anymore, but they have to now. Stupa became the symbol of the Buddha's mind. Yeah. So stupa is usually symbol of the Buddha's mind. Scriptures are a symbol of Buddha's speech, and statue of Buddha is a symbol of Buddha's body. So body, speech, mind, Buddha is therefore represented in the subsequently honoring the body of the Buddha, the statue, speech by the honoring the scriptures, and mind by the stupas. So the Buddhist people then starting to venerate or honor the remains of the Buddha that are enshrined in stupa. Of course, stupas themselves made out of mud and bricks and stones and wood and whatnot. But what they put inside the stupa are mainly the Buddha's relic, however small they are, and they always put the relic as well as some other things, and so as the tradition developed over the years, they not only put the relics of the Buddha, they put mantras, scriptures, and so on. So the whole tradition of building stupas and statues and writing down all the scriptures started. But not writing down just yet, but we'll come to that about next week, talking about what happened after Buddha passed away. How did the survivor disciples chose to who they chose as the leader, what happened to ensure the continuity of the teachings, and so on. So that's a very interesting chapter, what they call the Buddhist Council. They started first Buddhist Council. They started in Rajgriha and so on and so forth, in order to compile all the teachings and to ensure the continuity of the Dharma, even though Buddha passed away. But today I would like to just take a couple of moments for you guys to reflect, because we have lost one prominent Australian Buddhist teacher in Australia. His name is Lawrence Kantipalo. He came to Australia in the early 70s, and gave his whole life to Buddha Dharma in Australia. He was one of the pioneer Buddhist teacher, an English-speaking Buddhist teacher, and an Englishman, by the way, an ex-soldier, by the way. So his life had a full story of whatever you may call. And then he gave his whole life as a Buddhist teacher and became very influential among all Buddhist circles, not only in Australia but also New Zealand. He passed away last Monday after spending good 8 years in a nursing home, and his life is full of goodness of what truly a monk he was. Even though he disrobed, in his late 50, maybe he was already 60 when he got married, but he never stopped being a real monk. His real monk was his openness to treat all Buddhist traditions, and particularly to ensure what you call ordination of women, giving the equal status to the women, and opening his arms to all Buddhist traditional lineages. Up in what Buddha Dhamma in Wise Men's Ferry, he built a great, beautiful sala, probably one of the best in Australia, built according to Thai culture. And it's really still continue to stand out as one of the very good retreat centers there. And even though he left there after he disrobed, but he nevertheless committed his rest of life as a lay teacher, and opened a center up in Cairns, and invited many teachers of different traditions. And we formed a very good relationship, and he has contributed always as a monk. He always was, no matter how, whether the monkhood is determined by his status as one who enjoyed the respect of many devotees, or one who enjoyed the humility of being ordinary. When he disrobed, he probably chose to do the latter, because he was much more comfortable being ordinary, but very free as in his spirit. He never stopped being the good monk that Dharma needs to uphold and spread the teachings and so on. So he passed away, and his cremation, his funeral is tomorrow. So I thought I'm going to do this Samanda Bhadra's prayer in his memory today, as we have this regular Sunday thing together. So all of you also could sit in reflective meditation, because today we covered quite a lot of the stories of the death of most important people, even in the life of the Buddha, the Devadatta and Shariputra, Moggallanaputra, the Bhikshuni, Utpalivarna, and eventually Buddha himself, as well as many thousands of sanghas who passed away. And to our contemporary history of Buddhism in Australia, passing away of Lawrence Kantipalo also marks how will his true devotees and true students will learn to honor him in the best possible way, because he was a towering figure. He will continue to remain so, and so therefore, doing this Samanda Bhaddha prayer, I'm going to join today here. But tomorrow I'm able to go and join the funeral ceremony down in Kunming Temple in Melbourne, where they're going to offer a Triyana service, and I'm presiding over the Vajrayana section of doing sur for him there. But nevertheless, today I'm going to do this Samanda Bhaddha prayer in his memory before we conclude. So if you would all do your meditation or recite Om Mani Padme Hum, so that his spirit reaches the state beyond sorrow, and maybe attain nirvana if he has not already done so, as well as may his inspiration that he gave to many people in this part of the world be enlivened by his passing away, but not lose the inspiration. So one of the main role of commemorating the death of an important figure is to remember the legacy and remember the goodness and therefore offer prayers. So this is what I'm going to do. It will take only about 15 minutes, so if you will bear with me and you do your meditation or Om Mani Padme Hum, any prayers that you will do with me, that will be very good. Thank you very much, everyone. Shinge dunye lura dupa ye jawa kun lara du janza lon du je denan dunye sanje sanje seje wana shukpa da dadara chuye yen nama lupa damje jawa da ke kang tada nga pa me se jaso na yang je yen la jaso tra kun je jawa kun je yen tenra devra shikpa damje da ke do me do damba jingwa damba da sinye nam dang chupa do cho da ma me cho dang du pa damba jawa de da lan chupa je na sa damba nam dang chi cho dang chi ma pa ma re ra nyamba Goba Jabra Bobe Jogan Jawa de Dalanan Jaba Jaba Gana Lame Jaj the Dajawa Damjalaya Mosambo Jala Debe Dodage Jawa Gunla Janza Java the Jajadan Demo Wangan Ludanga Danti Dibadagi Jiva Java the Dadam Jadaga Zozo Jojo Jawa Gunda Sanje Zeranjananda Loda Mela Roa Gunja Sanangalaya the Dakunji Jozo Daya Kana Jojinji den Dramana Janjo Rimbra Sanje Maja Gombo de Dada Ge Damjela Kolo Lana Meba Gawa Yang da Dun Kanshi de Dala Roa Kun La Beijing de Kawa Jingi Dunye Java Yan Dage Dama Jazawa Janzawa Dan Jijin Java Dan Jizo Yeran Guyen Zawa Gewa Jungje Dage Jizo Tam Jizo Be Janju Jingo Debe Sanje Nandan Jojo Yan Jiden Dana Kanya Java Kaya Majo de Daranya Was Samzo Janju Rimba Sanje Jojo Kale Shina Jinyewa de Da Jaja Yongso Dabo Janju Xinwang Zheng de Java de Sanje Seje Rado Gangwa Jojo Samjan Kana Jinyewa de Da Da De Nemen Dewa Rowa Gunye Shuje de Nanan Dumre Juzin Rawan Zhebo Janju Jeba Danan Da Jujin Rowa Gunde Jawa Zhemo Sera Gunde Chiba Jawa Nan Da Do Da Ne Rao De Jingwa Jawa Gunye Jizo Lo Jue de Sangpo Jeba Yang Zo Zoji Sereng Jeba Jeme Yang Da Wa Da De Men Yang Jeme Jeba La Ye Ge Dan Le Dan Nu Jing Ge Zhigong Da Da Me Ye Gen Na Rowa Gunye Danan Jiza Wa Tam Je Ge Do Da Ge Jodong De Yin Pa Ro Jin La Rao Zheng De Chang Ju Sen Ne Na Yang Jima Diba Gan Han Jiba Jirwa Da De Da Ma Le Yang Zo Chang Wa Le Da Nyo Ma Du Je Le Na Le Zhu Yin Ji Den Rowa Nong Zhe Chidra Pe Ma Jime Jia Pa Jin Yin Da Nang Kwa Do Pa Me Zhe Jinge Jona Jona Jin Za Wa Ngen Zo Dong A Ra Do Je Wa Dewa Da Lan Zho Wa Kung Ge Jin Zho Wa Dam Je Lan Nen Ben Bo Chang Ju Jo Ba Yang Zo Zo Je Je Sem Jian Da Ge Jo Dong Dong Bo Song Bo Je Ba Da Ne Ra Do Je Ma Wang Ka Wa Kun De Je Bo Da Ge Je Dang Chong Ba Kang Je Wa De Da Da Ne Da De Je Bo Lu Da Nga Na Da Ne Sem Je Jo Jo Ba Da Da Mo Lang Je Da La Pen Pren De Be Zho Bo Da Song Bo Je Wa Ra Do Dong Bo Da 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 Yang Da De Je Bo Ye De Da Da Ge Na Ye Ye Me San Ji Si Je Ge Be Ngom Bo Na Ngom Song Da Do Da Ge Ja Wa Ma Wang Ka Wa Kun De Me Ja Wa De Da La Yang Je Ba Je Se Ja Wa Nem Je Dan Be Jun Je Je Chang Je Jo Ba Kun De Nang We Song Bo Je Ba Nem Bra Je Ba Ya Ma Wang Ka Wa Kun De Je Ba Si Ba Dem Je Do Yang Ka Wa Na Son Nam Yi Je Da Ne Me Se Da Dan Je Ra Ding Zhe Nang Dan Da Yuan Den Kun Je Me Sen Zhe De Lu Je Din Nan Du Ni Jin Nan De San Je Se Je Wo Na Je Ba Chang Je Je Ba Je Jian Da Wa Je De Da Lan De Zhang Nan Dan Je Zha Zhen Jun La Du Zhen Zhen Ni Je San Je Jia So Xin Nan Jia So Ga Wa Jia So Ju Jin Ran Jia Jo Song Je Yan La Jia So Zhe Gui Ya Wa Gun Yan Yan La Nang Da Wan Zhao Wa Gun Je Sang Ba Ji San Je Song La Da Deng Ju Ba Ye Du Zhen Xi Bei Jia Wa Deng Je Ko Le Zhen Na Ra Do Ga Wa Ye De Da Ken Yang Song Yang Me Sa Lo Yi Do Jin Da Jian Ra Do Zhe Ma Wang Ga Wa Deng Jian Ju Ba Ge Ji Ji Ge Da Jian Ju Ba Jo Kan Yang Ga Wa Du Zhen Ce Da Ge Ji Che Xi Jin Ne Ju Ba Ye Du Zhen Xi Ba Mi Ye Zeng Ge De Da Ge Ji Ji La Da Ge Da Da Do De Da Ge Ne Ju Gi Ma Ren Ji Be Nam Da Do Ji Je Kan Yang Du Zhen Da Ge Xin Ge De Da Du Ji Den Dong Ngam Ba De Da Me Le Chong Nan Deng Je Ya Wa Da Ge Xin Nan Ko Lan Jo Kan Yang Ma Jian Ji Den Da Ma Zhang Ju Ren Ba Zhang Jian Ko Lo Ko Nian Gen De Wa Rao De Xin Da Gong Bo Gun Ji Zheng Du Da Je Wo Gun De Ni Be Zhen Zhe Da Na kunen goye tibe dodo dan kunde yende jodo kunde jaba jamba dage do kunen gewe sonan dodo chaba me banju we je do chara da dan dinzen dan chanjo dan yang da droba je li je dan yang zo da je nyamon dam na kunde jum je du je dan na de me ra sambo je be dan zo ba je shenan ja za nam bra da je sam jen ja zo dan nam chenan ja za ra do dan je je ja zo ra do do ba chaba ja za nam bra da je malam ja zo yang zo jo ba sanjie ja zo ra de je ga wa ja zo me je ba kan ya de zhen je be ja wa ye chang je be ma lan je ra sang bo je be chang je sang je ne de gon da ge ma lan zo ba ya wa gun je se ye do wa kan ge me ne gun de sang ye ke wa de dang zong ba je be je ge wa de da dan je ra de lu dang ga da yi yan nam da ye jo ba nam da yin da yang da wa sang ba ge wa jen da wa de da yan de dang zong ba gun ne ge wa sang bo je be jen jang ba je na ma lan je ba wang ga wa gun de me ja wa de ya ja wa ma le zo ba就把当年这些满就原点南家这种没吧，就把这面把了那家的当主吧，他们就找我。那么给他都就把就咱把怎么马路打样的样，就咱来大年嘛大就把大概马浪打样的种，刚要就是现在大呀把人渐渐的叫我那了，大大米的就能就新给的呢，搞我不我，刚给我为叫我的的呢，长就交给技术了，连这这样的把叫我那说那么单别做的呢，刚给上就马浪的到位的那个上到这包，的那做帮跟帮我也那我他也这样的样，的到你把人家的话子没这样的样的到了吧。滚头上坡等下见到我的大人包没到的也，咱们阿婆大给的吧，那刚给没些样给去吧，天上坡这帮的就那牛头马老样说讲话，一些当年做当江南大的当看到能当的嘛，对当没对忙不得没得记得顺包可能就不，像就新王中的的年头上的什么边就等的，像就3年高了然后个对当的当就我等就，刚要上坡这边毛浪的长话当呢等到了呢，对那不然面包上节节讲就找了什么年嘛就。将把把握自然将把当更多上不的样的样，的大公节就说到了这个完的大等着了等，这些别叫我等着叫我看了就等我，大概给别早晚的公节上不就这了等我，大年7月就把那这把等着大年是说，我说那我的呀的那年的我经济心得了等，的上的呢莫浪的大家等着马路大概样子，今天其实深圳本把节价位经过了3年高，本毛咱把现在再来见那我大家位我说。龙天把呀大概的都要天南大概龙天了的，主要蒙博就我找家也落也都去找找那个，现在那老本把蒙博就上博这边莫浪的嘛，给我种这大概就找我天南这边莫浪给我，给这个大家就我就看样上博这边那个，说那么大爷当把看这边东啊去我去嘛。把没边的啦，都把要毛那叫我的打这个，但按照我跟那边去跟头上班进来去，俺说的那么了当把来说，大概都算给完的，都大家本来蹲在这里，咱们跟头等把结完，大起码的话真的结完，今天上些才把人把当时在把头等把什么，把忙几百什么咱们这也大概就从台湾到的，上班那么台湾，没那么的工作那么算的没钱了，老板这边做了那。这些马来班人就是叫我今天马个跟大个早上姐我来也突击今天，今天是啦讲着老马那边嘛，我们那边嘛，我们那边嘛，我们那边嘛，我们那边嘛，我们那。我们那边嘛，我们那边嘛，我们那边嘛，我们那边嘛，我们那边嘛，我们那边嘛，我们那边嘛，我们那边。我们那边，我们那边，我们那边嘛，我们那边嘛，我们那边嘛，我们那边嘛，我们那边嘛，我们那边嘛，我们那边嘛，我们那边嘛，我们那边嘛，我们那边嘛，我们那边嘛，我们那边嘛，我们那边嘛，我们那边嘛，我们那边嘛，我们那边嘛，我们那。我们那边嘛，我们那边嘛，我们那边嘛，我们那边嘛，我们那边，我们那边嘛，我们那边嘛，我们那。我们那边，我们那边，我们那边嘛，我们那边嘛，我们那边嘛，我们那边嘛，我们那边嘛，我们那。我们那边嘛，我们那边嘛，我们那边，我们那边嘛，我们那边嘛，我们那边嘛，我们那边嘛，我们那边嘛，我们那边嘛，我们那边嘛，我们那。我们那边嘛，我们那边，我们那边嘛，我们那边嘛，我们那边嘛，我们那边嘛，我们那边嘛，我们那边嘛，我们那边。我们那边嘛，我们那边嘛，我们那边嘛，我们那边嘛，我们那边嘛，我们那边嘛，我们那边嘛，我们那边嘛，我们那边嘛，我们那。我们那边嘛，我们那边嘛，我们那边嘛，我们那边嘛，我们那边嘛，我们那边嘛，我们那边嘛，我们那边嘛，我们那边嘛，我们那边嘛，我们那边。我们那边，我们那边嘛，我们那边嘛，我们那边嘛，我们那边嘛，我们那边嘛，我们那边嘛，我们那边嘛，我们那。 Omane bema, 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 omane Omane bema, 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 omane bema. Omane bema, 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 omane bema. Omane bema, 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 omane bema. Omane bema, 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 omane bema. Omane bema, 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 omane Omane bema, 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 omane bema. Omane bema, 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 omane Omane bema, 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 omane Omane bema, 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 omane Omane bema, 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 omane Omane bema, 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 omane bema. Omane bema, 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 omane bema. Omane bema, 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 omane Omane bema, oenge wande, enya da jere ze wande jen, rawa je jamale, te zalanga wa jo me yenge zo donga me ye yenga wa je ba me ba. La be le jene da da san je nyen ro jo ba ma sem je dam je de dan den je, ngen do dam je da do don wa dan jan je sem ba gan da so now we will do the dedication merits. Everybody, thank you for your attendance today to these teachings. And next week and the week after, we will have 2 more sessions on related with life of Buddha, because Buddha passed away, but there will a lot more happen. So we will have 2 more sessions on these next 2 Sundays. So we hope you can all join me then. But in the meantime, we do the dedication merits. Om Bai De Mere Mere Ho Ga Da De Vo Ben Ze Ge Hom Ne Ze Me Ai Le Bere Do Bez Rom De O Je No Ba Do De Se Ne De Herenda Maya Na Je Je Wa De Wa Mere Da Have Me Ho Be Be Ga Ze La Wa Za Tre Ho Da Maya Na Je Je Ga Re Je Man Ju Shri Nye Wo De Asa Ma Dra Ba Dra De Lai Wa Wa Lo We O Wo De He Zambo I sha de de ge o de mere me de excellent body jida treba we de no ye danzo we has been bo me ye dengre freely without the generation. Before you go, tomorrow the the funeral services of Lawrence Cantipalo will be live streamed. So you should be able to join, particularly those of you who have actually met him, have received his teachings from him, have got to know a little bit about him. If you're not on our mailing list, you wouldn't have read it. But if you're not, if you visit our website, there is an obituary about his life that I've written. That is on our website, so you can read that. Anyway, thank you very much. Take care, everyone.